ではまずですね、私の方から今回のテーマ選んだ理由をお話ししたい
Let
と
me
思います。
just talk about the reason why we came to this theme today. So animation, the biggest characteristic of this media is that you have the freedom to choose the style, the structure of the characters, how you depict the background. Everything there's freedom there. So and then the theme and the world and the reality, you can express them in any way you want. And that's why animation is so appealing. And so today we have 3 directors. You want to talk about their work and see how they finalized their visual direction, how they implemented all that. And so that's why we want to talk about what only animation can achieve as a possibility. Okay, so let's welcome the 3 guests, 3 directors to the stage. Let's give them a warm round of applause. Ready? So now, let us start by having you introduce yourselves and give us some opening remarks. So can we start with Director Kawamori? Yes, so I directed Labyrinth. My name is Shoji Kawamori. I am the director of The Possessed. I'm Wataru Takahashi.
Hi everyone, my name is Liane-Cho with Amélie Valade. We are the co-director and co-screenwriter of our movie Little Amélie, or The Character of Rain.
Okay, thank you for that, and we'd like to dive right into the talk session. So your work has been screened at the TIFF. And so we'd like to talk about the styles of how you depicted your films, and we'd like to ask you individually. So let's ask Director Kawamori. So The Labyrinth. So this depicts a girl, she goes into the world of the smartphone, and she's always afraid of, online backlash. But anyway, she goes into the world of the smartphone. It feels like a fantasy with sci-fi elements. So how did you come to develop those visuals? And so how should I begin the question? Maybe it's the questions, maybe the characters? Well, it's overall. Well, yeah, I think Macross Frontier was just being screened outside the venue here, but sci-fi, I did a lot of sci-fi, and this time this was set in the current time in Yokohama, and the characters are characters you see anywhere, and the girl. So, but just that wouldn't really make use of my distinctiveness. And also I thought smartphone is like your symbol of your identity. It contains all of your information here, your behavioral history, etc. And the smartphone cracking means that you're cracking. And so the girl, she's afraid of online backlash, and she gets trapped into that world of smartphone. And so the world inside the smartphone is not the real world. So it's kind of like a really strange place where you have network and dreams coming together. Okay, so inside the smartphone, the world, you said network and reality connected. So in detail, like how did you depict that into your illustrations? Well, network related stuff is already out there. So I didn't really want to have like a digitalized, like electronic world. You mean like background and lots of lights? That I didn't really want to do. It's like 2D graphic processing. I didn't want to go that direction. So I wanted to go into the world of dreams. Like it's kind of like a world that you see in your dreams. And the dreams you see at night, like when I talk to people, it's not so much of a fantasy when you're dreaming. It's actually a strange world of your reality. Like maybe the door of your bathroom is gone, or maybe there's water on the floor. It's just a little strange world of reality. And so that's what I wanted to do with the Yokohama setting in order to show the deep psychology of the characters. Okay, so then the art staff. I think you had to, talk with those staff, and you would have to give them a briefing with some keywords. Like the protagonist, Shiori, she goes home, and nobody's home in her home, but it still looks a little strange, the house. So I think you would have to give them a lot of ideas. Yes. So I want to do something new, and the creators, I want to draw out their, capabilities. So yes, I use keywords. I said something like black and white, something like a painting. I use those kinds of keywords and to talk with them. And also by scene, Shiori, the protagonist, depending on how she feels, the color changes or the way we did the processing changes. So yes, so we did all of that. So seeing it, Shiori's scene, her shadows seem to be very dark. Or maybe they're not shadows. So it's like there's darkness around her. It was so dark that it made me feel like there's darkness around her. So that you did that you talked about those scenes by scene? Yes. So the psychological pressure, I think, whether it's good or bad, it's like, somebody telling you you're not good. And so your world becomes white or black, So that's the world that I wanted to depict. And if I do it too much, it's too obvious. So to do too much. So we have to think about the good balance. Okay, Director Kawamori. So you just mentioned the smartphone cracked. You were showing that visual on your smartphone. So even in your film, we saw the cracked world. That was very impressive. We saw the screen, and that really represented your film. So I guess that image, like, can you? So that was a very important image for you for the film. Yes, when we were planning this more than 10 years ago, that was when I came up with the idea. And because at the time I used to see my smartphone cracking, and I was worried about that. And sometimes I left my smartphone somewhere, I forgot it somewhere. So cracking, forgetting, it's like you're cracking yourself or you're forgetting yourself. It's kind of like that for me. But then when you forget the smartphone, it doesn't become visualized nicely. But I thought cracked smartphone, I can visualize. Okay, Director Kawamori, so you're a mecha designer and you did design all kinds of mechanics. So when you give direction, do you say, okay, this is Shiori's house, what kind of house? Like, do you draw the pictures in order to get the outcome? I try not to draw, but I don't want to limit. But with sci-fi, yes, it's easier, faster when I draw in sci-fi. But it's closer to reality. I just try and talk based on keywords. Okay, so then character design, you based yourself on something that's reality. So I guess she's kind of like a plain girl, maybe, that you depicted, but you're doing that through keywords. Yes, Ibata-san, she also worked on Macross Frontier. She's really good at drawing charismatic, graphics, and so it's plain, where she was. But the other Shiori, who is more wild, she was more flashy. So that's why the real Shiori, she made a little plain. And digital technology, I mean, there's so much you can do with character design. So for the anime fans, people do so much, and but then when you do too much, I guess the abstractness or I still want to keep that from the manga. I want to keep that manga-ness. I think I wanted to make it as simple as I can. Okay. So 3D CG characters is what you worked on, and you can add more stuff, but you decided not to. Yes, that's what I mean. And so I didn't want to add too much elements, or else, because we're going between reality and inside the smartphone, it's already complicated. So that's why I want to make the characters simplified. And also, I wanted to really make it an animation. That's why I had the stamp character. Yeah. And so when you go inside the smartphone, the stamp, you see a bunch of those stamp characters, right? Yeah, they're the characters, and they're flat and thin, and they're like 2D. And that is the area where I can show the cartoonness. So if it becomes too much of a cartoon, then it's gonna look out of place as a story. So, okay. So then, Director Kawamori, so you do sci-fi, and people see you as doing sci-fi, and then. So basically, it's what you do is sci-fi. I think that's what everybody thinks. So for this film, I guess, in terms of look, it was a challenge for you in this film. Yes. I really need to do something like that, because nowadays people really, are particular about the look. And I wanted to do something interesting, for Japan and global. And I think it's been like 30 years ago, we did Spring in Chaos. Kenji no Haru in Japanese, Spring Chaos and it was in English, and it was a cat character, and it was hand-drawn. And so I did make those challenges back then. And so I wanted that essence. I wanted to combine that with reality. Okay. I'd like to hear all of that history later. Thank you. Okay, so Director Takahashi, The Obsessed.
So speaking of The Obsessed, so this person, Giuseppe, is the protagonist, and then he's nicknamed the man who gets obsessed, and then he gets into different things, and then I believe that content-wise is like a fairy tale for grown-ups, and then the character design is done by Masatsugu Arakawa. Very impressive characters are portrayed. And how did you decide on that direction? Well, actually, it is the original novel is by Shinji Ishii, and then I read the short novel, and then the impression I got was that it was very sparkly, full of shine, fantastic, and it's like the dream world. And I thought, okay, so rather than to portray this with realistic characters, I should make it more animation-like. Maybe an old school style will better convey this pure message. And that's why I went to Mr. Arakawa for character design. Okay, so Mr. Arakawa, the way he imagines the shapes of things is very original. So what kind of expectation did you have toward him? Well, so I don't know how to put this in words, but the way he draws clouds and then the trees and then the windows in distance should be like this, and he definitely has his own style. And I don't know how to put this in words, but he really puts importance on how he draws natural elements like the rain and the raindrops that splash on the ground, snow, and snowflakes. He has very solid philosophy of how they should be drawn. And then I thought that if I ask him to work on this, he could create a totally different world for us. And I saw your film, and so you're creating a world with drawings that could be drawn with a pencil. And there is a production called A Production, which had a very strong presence in the 1970s. So this is the predecessor of Shinei Animation. So I felt like you showed respect to their artworks. Was that the case? Well, style-wise, I didn't say, yes, let's make it April-like, but I've always stayed at Shinei Animation, so maybe that got instilled in me. So I love animations from those times. So they used to produce a myriad of animations, and then there's such strength to it, and then they didn't really care too much about details. So it seems like, you know, they were very bold in what they did. And they were open about it. And then I feel like that showed in what they created. And Arakawa-san loves Shibayama-san. So Shibayama-san was a main animator who used to work at APRO, yes. So it's not like I was too conscious of that, but naturally I came to this sort of style. So when you have a taste like that, the production design and the characters, that they need to blend well, and then when they blend well, I believe that really portrays a story well. So how did you come about to make that combination? So I should have called Mr. Arakawa for this session. Actually, he was the one who conceived this idea of how to combine the production design and the characters. And then the person who did the production design is really a child of that production. So so when you draw a cloud, you just like paint the color in a two-dimensional way, and then the designer just got it instantly. And so he was really excited to take part in this project. So by the way, Kobayashi Production did a lot of production designs for APRO, and then they're known for making something simple but very very unique in style, and that has a certain presence. And then the person who did the production design also was an apprentice at Kobayashi Pro back in the day. So in order to establish that fairy tale-like world, you thought that maybe you could go back to the times when people used to appreciate paintings and drawings. Yeah, so that's one thing. But it's more of me wanting to have the creators enjoy the creative process. I feel like nowadays we don't have so many films that have that sort of an old school feel to it. And then I went to the production designer and said, well, actually the character designer is going to be Mr. Arakawa. And they're like, okay, so I'm doing it. And then even the young people said that they had dreamt of drawing, styles of drawings like that. So they just kind of like organically gathered and resonated with the production of this film. I see. So so this is an animation. So I believe that the motivation to draw a certain type or certain style of drawings is going to serve an important element of the film. Yes, because you have to, put all you got into tens and even hundreds of drawings. And then I prefer something simple because the more you can draw, the more you can move them. And then for the obsessed, what are other things that you were conscious of? And then I believe that we'll talk more about shooting later in general. So when you do shooting, you do composites. So you do compositing, but I guess the policy that you had was to go simple. Well, but now the coloring is done digitally. So, and then if you just, do this digitally, then it would look too flat. So we worked with the DOP, Sekia-san, and then we started to make the look and feel together. So when you say flat, so you gave a little palette to it by putting like pastel color to it for gradation. Yes, and then I processed the lines in a very unique way, and then we used a recipe of Sekia-san. So I don't know exactly how he made it, but there's some textures, like subtle textures that are applied to it. So you use effects in a subtle way so that it doesn't look too flat and two-dimensional. Exactly, yes. I see. And then aside from the visual element, it's a musical animation. So what were the challenges you faced as you made the musical animation? So there, I was told that it was going to be a musical, and then I'm not good at singing at all, and I can't really sing on notes either. So I was like, well, how could I possibly direct an animation that's a musical? But I loved the original novel, so I wanted to find a way somehow to turn it into a film. And music is something that gets to the audience directly to their ears, so it plays a very big role in the film. And then I hope that the audience could immerse themselves in the world of the obsessed by listening to the music. Thank you. So let's go to director Liane-Cho. So Little Amélie. So the original novel is by Amélie Norton. It was a novel, and then you turned it into an animation film. So what sort of visual style did you come up with, and what sort of discussion took place in the first place?
Actually, it all began with this movie called Long Way North that we have made 10 years ago, directed by Rémi Chaillet. Maëlys and I were both storyboarder on that movie, and I was then after animation supervisor on that. And already we loved that style without outlines. Actually, Maëlys's graduation movie was also made like this. And for me, I felt like, I really prefer to, because I was not very good with the lines, actually. I was better with like the painting, the sculptural style, of drawing, actually. And of course, since Long Way North, we also have this artistic family, this team that follow each other already on Long Way North and then on Calamity. And we love that style because it feels almost like a painting, you see, when there is no outline between the characters and the background. We really love when the lights hits the character, this nice light without any limit, any border. And of course, this style we try to continue from Long Way North, Calamity, and then after with Little Amélie, with Maëlys. Of course, the theme of our movie was very different. It's about little childhood, of course, small childhood. And so we wanted to be sure that all those shapes, were a bit more round, with this little more pastel texture around, with this little vibration, that we made with compositing, you see. And maybe compared to the previous movies, we also push the effect of blur, focus, out of focus, to be really in the eyes, in the gaze of this little girl, you see, like to really play those macro shots when you put the camera very close to her, you know, and of course to play with this transparency, the texture, you know. So we are not only through her eyes, but we are also through her sensitivity, her emotion. And this is really this graphical style that we really adopt for so many years now with this amazing team.
I see. And so you talked about the outlines. So in this world, when you work with a large group of people, I believe that you tend to use lines more. So what do you think is the advantage of not having lines, or what do you think are the disadvantages of that?
Of course, when you start the drawing of a character, we start with a rough line, of course, you know, and then after we paint the characters. Why? It's a very important question, because the reason we also like this style is also for economical reason. We use this software called Adobe Animate, who previously was called Flash, actually, which is a vectorial software, you know, because, you know, our movie, it's a mix of cutout animation and traditional animation. And when you have cutouts, you know, and if you don't have outline, you can cheat a lot, actually, you see, without any fixing the, you know, all the connection between the joints, you see. And we can reuse a lot of those drawings, you know, because it's a vectorial and it's Adobe Animate. So we earn a lot of time. So there is, of course, an economical reason for that.
I see. So for those of you who are here, I'm not sure how knowledgeable you are about animation production, but cutout is basically kirigami animation in Japanese, you know. So the limbs are made separately, and then you like connect them to control the movements. But nowadays you can make it move in a complex way more, and then it looks as if it's pretty much at the par level as hand-drawn animations, but you basically have to move those joints in the right way. And then when you have outlines, you have to go through the step of getting rid of the outlines, but you don't have to go through that step in the process when you use that software.
So then, I guess, style and the efficiency, the theme, the world. We have this small girl, so we have a intimate distance with the girl, and I guess all of those elements, you know, come into play, I guess, for your film.
Absolutely. It was one of the challenge, of course, as I say, was to be in her point of view. So through her height, you know, where the world is huge, you know, like to have the horizon like very low. That's why we really make sure that the camera was always a bit low, you know. And for example, when she's in a garden, you know, the garden is unlimited. There is no limit, you know. It's like when we were a kid and we see all those places, and when we come back when we are adults, we are like, oh, it's not that big actually. It was pretty small, you know. So we wanted to reproduce also that feeling here with placing the camera at her level as much as possible. But not only that, not only camera, color has also a very important role in our movie, actually, because the color is also following her emotional state, you know. When she's just born, you know, the color are very pop, you see, and a lot of blur, and, you know, because when you're born, you don't see clearly, the light is very strong, you know, and then the color are a bit more, you know, pop, bright, you know, and then when she's going a bit down in her emotion at the end, you know, you see the color are a bit more, how do you say, toned down, a bit more brownish, like the autumn, you see. So we try to make sure it follows emotion. And the other thing as well, which is actually a brilliant idea from our art director Edine, is to have one color representing each character. For example, Amélie is green, Nisha-san is yellow because it's warm, the sun, Kashima-san is purple, and everyone has their own color, to identify them, And then at the end, when Amélie is actually losing she's struggling, all the color are mixed up between the character. So it's like almost like we also lose, ourselves, just like Amélie.
Okay, let me just add on to that. So little Amélie, she has a father who is a diplomat from Belgium, and she is in Kobe. And that's in the 1970s. I think that's the setting of the film. And it's a very unique setting. And that's why, you spoke about Kashima-san and Nishio-san, the Japanese characters, just to let the audience know why. So, the background, when you depict the background, I think you might have wanted to depict Japaneseness. I think there was a shrine or a temple. There was also the lantern, drifting in the river. So colors, I think, did you, focus on the colors to show Japaneseness or Japanness there?
Of course, we made an idealized Japan because we are through the eyes of this little girl, right? And even the author, the Amélie Nothomb, has this big nostalgia of Japan. So we wanted to make sure that all the colors, all those moments were really beautiful, you see. And for example, you mentioned this lantern sequence, which is actually not in the book. It's not in the book. But at that time, we really needed to find, like when we were writing with Maëlys and Edine, the script writing, we need to find a moment to talk about death and how people were grieving their death, and we were looking, and we found on internet this moment called Obon, you see, which is in August, in summer. It was exactly perfect moment, perfect timing in our timeline,
See, so that's how you were depicting the Japanese background and so forth. I see.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, because of course we are not Japanese, and of course it's not our story, and the book is also talking about this conflict of culture between this little girl who's Belgian, but she thinks she's Japanese. And of course, with the situation in Japan at that time, after World War II, after the scars are still open, you see. So of course, we had to be sure that we treat this theme with as much respect as possible, even though we are talking about a conflict of culture, this double culture, because we are through the eye of this author, right? So of course, Edine, our art director, made a very, very thorough work about everything in this specific area, which is around Kobe, around the village of Shukugawa, in 1968, 1970. Like every object, every element, even the lizard, the vacuum cleaner, the fridge, the fish, existed at that time, at that period.
Thank you. So you mentioned that. So that was in Japan. So director Takahashi. So the Obsessed is actually Europe, somewhere in Europe. It's a picture of what the Japanese see as Europe, and. So director Takahashi, so how was that approach, depicting Europe in your... Well, I wanted to not... Well, I didn't... I like this, visuals where you cannot locate where it is, what country it is. And so I didn't really want to say what country. And so that is why, so that was the basis of what I was doing. And so I didn't really want to say where it was in my film. But we did want a feeling of Europe-ness. Where is that kind of feeling? And I thought of English, I like, water, I like river. So maybe it can look like, it's in England or the UK. But the buildings should look really, were too rigid looking. So Arakawa-san said, maybe the roof can be pink or blue. Or it can be colorful. It can be a beautiful town because the buildings were too rigid. So color of the roof is France, but the structure of the building is like from the UK. So it looks a little strange, like a strange town. Okay, so references for the town, did you get references, collect references? Yes, I did. And I thought, okay, maybe it's a town here in the UK, and we collected some references. Of course, we couldn't go location hunting, so Akiyama-san had complained to me because he really wanted to go on location hunting, but anyway, but the layout would come up early because we didn't go on location hunting. So, So, it was, we felt kind of relaxed doing this. So, little Amélie, so how did you get references on Japan?
Internet, Google Street View. And actually, Edin was so thorough that he actually could find Amélie Nothom's old house, even though it was destroyed, after, I think, the earthquake in Kobe. So it was, of course, a lot of reference. Actually, we could find, we were very lucky to find, I think it was in a flea market, a photo album, like a Japanese photo album from that time, actually. Very beautiful pictures, actually, to feel the mood. So, of course, no, we never went to Japan. Of course, Edin has been in Japan for a long time because his wife is Japanese, actually. So he has been there quite a lot. So, of course, he understands. Of course, sometimes consult, of course, his wife as well. Yeah.
So internet, searching on internet, I think that's what the Japanese animation industry does too. So, Director Kawamori, so Yokohama was your setting. It's quite close from Tokyo. But, so Minato Mirai, so what areas did you was it hard for you to try and cut out which areas to cut out? Well, I was living in Yokohama from 3 years old until I became an adult, and it's kind of like one of my hometown. Yokohama has a lot of hills, and I already had that image, and you're going into this smartphone crack world. It's like you're going into the psychology. I really wanted to show a place so that Minato Mirai, it's in different layers, and then underneath there's the metro, the subway, and then it was good to show those different layers. There's a very long escalator too at the station, so that's why it was good to show the structure of your emotions, of your heart. And when I'm working on sci-fi, I have to write everything down, and that was a big struggle. This one, I just wanted to do this somewhere where I can just take, because I just took pictures. I just thought it would be more simple. I just took pictures. And if they said it was hard to understand, they would go again to take pictures. Okay. So then we had heard about different styles here. Now going on to the next topic. So among the films that you've seen before, I think that there's all kinds of designs, looks. I think, so the question would be, what was some aspects or scenes from a certain piece of work that left an impression on you? So So yes, can we start with Liane-Cho, please?
So actually, when I was 16, the same year, I discovered Princess Mononoke in a cinema, and I was crazy about it. It was released later in France and in Japan, and I could borrow a VCD, and I watched it 12 times in 1 week at 16. And then the same year, I discovered Hotaru no Haka, The Grave of the Fireflies from Takahashi. And I think when I watched it, I cried in the bathroom having my shower for 2 hours, actually, And then I watched it in total 6 times in the same week. And the same year as well, I discovered, this is maybe a bit less famous. It's OVA called Rurouni Kenshin Tsuokuhen. Maybe you don't know this one. But I...
Tsuyoku-hen desu ne.
Yes. Tsuyoku-hen. Yes. Sorry for my pronunciation. And yeah, this one I probably watched it in my life probably 100 times, So of course, Satoshi Kon's movie, of course, Okura-san movie as well, Then all those Japanese movies, me, but all of us in France, are so inspired by that,
See, so you mentioned a few titles here, Japanese titles. Rurouni Kenshin. Let's talk about that one. So Rurouni Kenshin, there's a TV anime program. I think it's called Samurai X in other countries. And it's kind of like the boys manga style action, and that's the expression. And the Tsuyoku-hen that you mentioned is pretty realistic expression. Now, so with hand-drawn animation, it's about making it look like the real thing. Was it very impactful for you, those kinds of hand-drawn things?
It was extremely impactful, Tsuyoku-hen, especially that later, it has been adapted in live action, Tsuyoku-hen, in live action with real actors, right? And you could feel, in my point of view, you see, that with all this very cool movement that this actor was doing, I could actually feel more disconnected than the anime version, you see, because for some reason, with drawing, for some reason, because of the way the camera has been placed, the way the very simple movement it's so I don't know, for some reason I feel much more connected, than watching it in live action, because it feels very too cool, too stylish, So even if it's real. For some reason, I feel disconnected from the reality.
I see. And this goes for Hotaru no Haka as well. The weight. So conveying weight with drawing is quite difficult to do, and I feel like that is one of the reasons why you felt that way. Do you think that you're influenced by Rurouni Kenshin as you became an animator?
Of course, not only the drawing, but the way the camera is placed, of course, the tone, the poetry, the music as well, and the acting, the subtle acting, you see. And because, where we are in France, we are between America and Japan, you see. And of course, we have, it's two different styles, two extremity, you see. But a lot of us were much more influenced by Japanese animation because we love the subtleties, And in our movie, Little Amélie, or even before Long Way North and Calamity, because we are also a smaller budget movie compared, it's still an independent movie, but with Japanese animation as inspiration, you see, we could actually express as much as possible in terms of emotion with just a little bit, And that's the incredible thing with Japanese animation. You can have so much emotion with just the minimum. And that's what we try to achieve already from Long Way North until now, of course, Little Amélie.
I see. Thank you for your comment. So when you look at the history of Japanese animation, there is some limit of resources because you can only use so many pieces of drawings. And then in the 70s, it started to become richer. But so it's good to know that our struggles in this industry have been traveling to France. So, Director Takahashi, what are the things that impacted you in terms of style and inspiration? So there was one thing that I used to watch as a child. It's Kinnikuman. I love it. Of course, I love animation of that. But sometimes there are episodes that make you cry, that make you teary, and then the animation could be rough, but the actors acting is so emotional, and then that's when I realized that you can actually cry with an animation. And then when I, entered junior high, I think it was Akira for me that really had a great impact on me. I had never seen anything like that before. And Akira, there's no specific theme. It's not intended to, move you emotionally. There is no such thing as so they're basically communicating the beauty of destruction just with a visual, and then I was just dumbfounded after watching it. I don't know if that had impact on me, my creation, but you were able to see the possibility of animation, and then that's exactly what you felt through Kinnikuman as well, because Kinnikuman, that animation made you cry. Exactly, yes. Director Kawamori, what about for you? Well, it's ages ago, so I don't remember details of it, but Kanashimi no Belladonna, when I saw that for the first time, that was shocking. So I think I watched it when I was just breaking into this business. This is Belladonna of Sadness. So illustration, all of a sudden started to move in a very aggressive way, and then it does take on a very mature theme, and it combines it with visual. So I think that showed me the possibilities of Belladonna. So Belladonna, had a lot of impressive mise-en-scène just with the positioning of the camera. So, director Lee Cho-han was talking about this. So it was conveying emotions with limited number of drawings. Exactly. So when you think about animation, there is animation meaning animating the visual. So that's one thing. And then animation means to literally animate things, so giving life to an inorganic matter. So even though when it's moving, of course, it looks as though there's life infused into it. But when it's static, you can still feel life. And then, that wide breadth of expressions is really impressive to me. So finding aesthetics in the static visual, I believe, is a characteristic of Japanese animation. It's sort of like No and the Masks of No, because the mask doesn't change, but the emotions inside are moving very rapidly. And then director Liane-Cho was talking about this too briefly. I believe that that is very different from the style of American animation. So director Isao Takahata said that basically use only 3 visuals to show the movement of the mouth. And then that's because our facial muscles don't move that much when we speak. So even for realistic animation, it doesn't look unnatural because our facial muscles don't move that much. And then the movements are rather more exaggerated in other countries, and then maybe this wouldn't have worked in other parts of the world. So yes, I think that's very much related to this. And then because when you're outside of Japan, the people move like this. And then when you come to Japan, you don't really see so many people that have very big gestures. I mean, there are some people like that, but very rare. So you have directed the movie versions of Crayon Shin-chan, and then Crayon Shin-chan has its own world. The breadth of the expressions of the characters, how do you think of that? How do you approach that? Well, it's a simple character, Crayon Shin-chan. You can't really, turn it into an exaggerated version of that. But yet, even though it's such a simple character, you're able to convey the emotions. And I believe that that goes back to what director Kawamori said. So because the drawings are simple, the visual is simple, it communicates more. So as long as you direct it in such a way that simple characters convey emotions. I mean, there are movies of Crayon Shin-chan that really move you emotionally. But for Crayon Shin-chan, it's better that the character moves dynamically. But for some climax cuts, sometimes I intentionally stop the movement of the characters. So let's talk about the character design. Let's go to you, director Liane-Cho. When you watch Little Amélie, the way you draw the eyes are unique, the pupils look like the center is indented, so that's why it looks very three-dimensional. And then when you want to show something realistic, I believe that this is a style that even Japanese animation pieces take on. So how to express the eyes. So it is a two-dimensional film, but it gives that subtle three-dimensionality and reality, and then you do that through eyes. And that was my guess. Am I right?
Yes, actually, to talk about the history of those eyes, actually, on Long Way North and Calamity, the eyes were more graphic, more simple, sometimes more geometric, especially on Long Way North. And when we had the camera very close to the character, it was always the same design. For Amélie, actually, we wanted to be maybe a bit more like Japanese animation. When your camera is very close to the character, you have more details. And when you're far away, you are less details. And of course, the eyes were, of course, mega important in our movie, especially Amélie's eyes, And of course, all those little highlights, having the pupil a bit more behind, to feel like the crystalline, this shape, so it's a bit more, volumetric, as you said, Of course, it was totally intentional. Of course, sometimes we exaggerate a bit, but it really gives much more depth as well, because we have a lot of close-up in this movie.
I see. So the eyes of Amélie really left a strong impression on me. And then she's also watching this world that she lives in. And I believe that that's deeply connected to the theme that you're depicting in this movie. So.
Absolutely. Of course, we are following, of course, the gaze, the eyes of this unique 2.5-year-old girl, Belgian girl who was born in Japan, who believes she's God, of course. And of course, we see all the beauty of the world through her eyes, you see. And of course, the way she sees this fascinating Japan post-World War II, and of course, how she sees this poignant relationship she has with Nishio-san.
Thank you. So I'd like to ask this to Director Kawamori. So you said that you aimed for the simplicity of the characters, but at the same time, I don't know how to put this in words, but you mainly use 3D CG to create your characters. So when you think about the details, for example, the eyes, in other matters, I believe that you took on a different type of challenge than when you're doing a regular animation. How was that for you? So giving strength to, or the power to the eyes is really important. So I did retouch on top of the 3D animation. So other parts could be simple, but I wanted to give more detail and nuance to the eyes. And then I want to also touch upon this topic of simplifying the characters. So the difference between live action and animation, I believe that there are many elements that are different. But for me, live action is really suitable when you want to show subtle changes of emotions in the ordinary life or physicality of it. But when you turn to animation, it becomes more abstract. And then there's going to be more intentional selection that comes in at play. So for me, I feel like simple concept could be better portrayed with animation. Of course, you can do that with live action, but it oftentimes turn out to be art house films when you try to portray a concept. So I don't want to bring in too many details to animation to make it closer to live action. I feel like it kind of reduces the attraction of animation. So for you, Director Kawamori, so 3D CG that's close to photoreal tone is not something attractive for you? I mean, if I'm doing live action, of course, I like to use it. But when I'm making an animation film, I wouldn't say I'm not interested. But honestly speaking, when you go toward photoreal style, then it doesn't matter who the director is. And then when you look at Hollywood films, you feel that is the case. So you believe that the tone and the style of the visual is what constitutes the attractiveness of the animation, right? And then the more that you strip it down, I feel like it makes it easier for you to put a strong concept to this.
Okay, so question to Director Takahashi, the Possessed. I think it's kind of like abstract, the character design. And on the other hand, it also looks a little bit real. You feel like these characters are real human beings. I think maybe I kind of see that intention of yours there. So how did you think about dramatizing these, and how did you work with the animators on portraying the characters? Well, talking to the animation director and crew, it's so hard to, express. So when we're having a meeting on the animation, I would be like, please do this. And it's more like a request, asking them to please do this for us. And when I see the results, sometimes it doesn't really match what I was referring to in the beginning, but there's color on it, and but I'm thinking maybe if you shoot that and you put voice on it, it does work. So it's really strange. So it really depends on how I feel too. So yeah, it's a way I see it, I guess. And also the possessed. I think there's like real, and then there's symbolic, there's abstract. Like, which direction did you want to go into? Because when I was thinking about more detailed expression, well, Giuseppe, he moves around a lot. He makes bigger actions. And so that was the policy there. And then in the latter part, there's some serious, internal issues. And he has to work that out. And so we didn't change the way we depicted the way we portrayed the character, but I don't know how to say this, but yeah, I felt like we can still express all that. So in terms of direction, it wasn't like, oh, you have to do this or we can't do anything. It wasn't like that. Okay, so my impression is that Giuseppe, he has bigger movements. But the most important part of this film is that, he's talking on top of the ladder, that scene where he doesn't move that much. That was an important scene. And I thought that was the point of this film. So what do you think? Did you focus on that scene? Yes, that is the theme of this. Because when I first read the original story, that's what I, came to my mind, that scene. And that was the center. And then we came up with more stories surrounding that part. And I thought, okay, let's make Giuseppe look like this, look like that. And in the beginning, it was okay if you didn't identify with that character. I thought it was okay that people couldn't follow this character in the beginning. So, okay. So this is not just for the obsessed, but with you, character reality, what is the trigger to make people think this character is alive? Whoa, okay. Is that too big a question? Yes, it is a big question. That making it look like he or she is alive? That is difficult. I'm sorry for that. Maybe it wasn't a good question. If you have any thoughts, of course.
But I think for the beauty of the art we are doing, animation, I think for me the best compliment we can receive is when people say that they forget they are watching animation, that they are watching a real movie, you see? So it means that the people, the audience, connect as a human to some abstract shape on the screen, and I feel that's where we won the battle, That's when people forget that they are watching animation, and that's for me the best compliment we can receive. Yeah.
I see. So it's the real thing, I guess, when people think they forget that it's an animation. So director, so character. So portraying characters as, making them seem like real characters. Like, what do you do to make people think that? Well, screenplay. I worked with my staff members in the screenplay, or when I'm drawing up the storyboard, Yeah, this was Hashimoto-san. Like, there are some parts when I feel like something is more passionate, and when I feel it, I feel like this character is alive. It's like usually when you're just shooting a regular actor, he's alive, so of course he's alive. But here with animation, even before putting voice on the character, you feel that this character is alive, and that's really weird because. I guess, there's so many staff members, and their multifacetedness is combined into a new type of life. And that moment is so appealing. That's why I can't stop making animation. Okay, Director Kawamori, hearing you. Director Takahashi, so when you read the original story, so I guess you were really amazed at the story. Now, how was it like that for you? For not just for Giuseppe, but like Tatan Sensei, the teacher, in your film. Yeah, how was it when you read the original story? That was a question, sorry. Okay. I'm sorry, I don't know how to phrase what I want to say. Okay, let's change the question. Okay. Well, for me, I've never really worked on original story. Like, I can't... so I just have to keep doing things until I find the right way for me. Okay. We spoke about characters, and so not just with your films here, but I think most of animated films are like the background. And so not just for your film, but what do you think about background art or animation in your film? So Director Kawamori, you said sci-fi, you have to draw memos up as a brief. But you try and get things that are of reality as much as possible. So, what do you look for in the the background, the art background? Like, do you have a certain philosophy? That is a very difficult question, because even if I want to do something, it all depends on whether I can find the right person who can depict what I'm thinking in my mind. So it's like a combination of that. Okay. So the animation is done by a group. So the people that work with you always have to get a good image. Yes, like, Belladonna of Sadness, like, that. Yeah, of course I want to create a movie like that, but where do I get all the creators? Yeah, it's like, I don't even know if I'm going to get always the same staff members to work on my project. So how about Liane-Cho-san? What do you look for in the background style? Like you work with Levi Chaillet, and then you work to so Amélie is different from your two other films. So what do you look for in the background design and animation?
I believe in the style we have made already with Remy, but of course which has been evolved on Amélie. It's this way of painting, like almost like impressionist. You see, by the touch, you see, and have also this strong, this powerful light as well, light direction as well. We also love that very much in the background, But of course, it's also the composition of the general image, because we see a movie by the frame, and we like to sometimes cheat the background, cheat the perspective in order to communicate the right feeling, the right emotion in terms of composition as well, yeah. But in the background style, as you said, we like this painting effect, like this impressionist style, because our background artists we have, they are painters, basically, they are like painters, like outside painters, and they love to use their their paint, their watercolor gouache, and paint outside. That's the way they do. Of course, we did it with Photoshop for the movie, but they like, in their free time, to sketch. Of course, yeah.
Director Takahashi, what do you expect from the background in general? Maybe not just for your films. So for The Obsessed, so we wanted to come up with a textured background that matches well with this style of characters, and then Akiyama-san agreed with me on this one. So for the background, we draw them on a piece of paper. And then and some of the staff said that they've never drawn on paper before. And there are brush strokes that you can feel. And then for each scene, each cut, it's different, the brush strokes. And then when I saw the first one, some of the staff came to me saying that the touch is different from the previous one that I submitted. And then we needed to redo it. But halfway through, I said, there is no way we can have exactly the same style or touch. And then I started to perceive this differently. And I realized that as long as the audience could see that these are hand-drawn by people, it would make sense. So for The Obsessed, the attraction of the illustration or drawing, if that comes out, then that's a win, right? And then it matches very well with the characters. Yes. And then we boldly got rid of some of the details intentionally. And then it just felt really refreshing to see that come to life. So for each scene, each cut, I guess what's interesting about animation is that you get to cheat or you get to abbreviate. Exactly. You can say, okay, so this part is not going to be seen, so we don't have to, draw a detail of what's in the distance. So we focused so that the audience will pay more attention to what's in front of them. So nowadays, Japanese animation tends to have more information in the cut. So no brush strokes. I wouldn't say they're getting close to photography, but the texture doesn't seem like it's hand-drawn. I believe that that's the new style that's coming into the picture. And then I felt like The Obsessed intentionally kind of like moved away from that sort of style. Right. So I don't know how to put this in words, but so let's say that there's engraving on the surface of a wooden door, and then there's highlights of light. And then you put little dashes of white paint on it to show the highlights. And then maybe you can have the same door drawn with a different style, and then you can draw the highlights in more detail. But all in all, the impression you get could be the same from two different styles of drawing. And I feel like when it's rougher, it leaves stronger impression on you. I see. Thank you. So this is more of a question to sum up the session. Feature films are being produced in quantity globally, and then what is becoming more important is to tell a story. Compared to short animation, the style tends to be conservative for feature films because they need to tell the story to the audience, and then they create the background and the characters to tell the story. And then I believe that sometimes leads to making directors more difficult to take on new challenges. So what is the type of style that you want to take on as a challenge for you to create a feature film? Director Liane, any style that you are wishing to produce?
Actually, I'm going to quote my first advice from my first animation teacher when I was 19. He told me, Liane-Cho, in animation, don't try to impress, try instead to move people. So for me, it will be always about emotion, especially in a time like this where we have AI who can create things which are spectacular, but still, I hope for quite a long time, emotion will still be for us to create. And yes, I mean, for the future, I would say, I started to ask myself why I'm doing this job, basically, with what's happening in the world, you see. Should I be more a farmer, a nurse, a teacher, or a climate engineer, So why doing this, even though I love my job, of course, And yeah, my challenge in the future is hopefully to find projects that, make me, inspire me to, to maybe communicate something to the audience, I have this future project that I'm developing right now, which is actually talking about prehistorical time, 25,000 years ago, you see, where it's a special time. Of course, you have the mammoth, all those big animals, wild and cavemen, you see, but it's also a moment where you have two human species living together, one in Central Europe, one existing for 400,000 years, and one who just arrived, which is our species. And then right after, almost a few years after, the first one goes extinct, So it tells a lot about what we are as well, So I hope this is a project I can make in the future so the pupil can see, also our origin, that we come all from the same species, even though not individuals, not community or as a civilization, but we are one and same species.
Thank you. And Director Takahashi, what is the type of project or style that you want to take on? Well, so far, I just finished my film, so I can't really think anything else at this stage. But when you're in the middle of the creation process, I always struggle with the gap, I feel, because I think, oh, why am I making such a silly film when there are so many things happening in the world? But there is power of fiction, and I believe that that is strong. So I didn't want to be beaten down by the reality. In order not to be beaten down by reality, I wanted to create at least one thing that is beautiful. And that's what I'd like to do in the future as well. And then I believe that The Obsessed is a type of film that it was aiming to get closer to the beauty. Yes, so I didn't want to be too educational. Or, something that is preachy. I wanted to portray humans. What about you, Director Kawamori? So it's about making people's hearts move, as Director Han said, and I was thinking about that. And then actually I was in charge of the signature pavilion at the Osaka World Expo for 6 months. And then the theme of that World Expo is to let lives shine. And then for the past 5 years, I had been constantly thinking about lives. And then I thought lives and shining lives are different. And then what is the difference between lives and shining lives? I was thinking about that. And then when you looked, I went to places where indigenous people still live, and then they enjoy their lives to their fullest without even watching a film. And then there are wild animals that were beautiful. And then I thought, okay, so what makes people shine? What makes lives shine? And I thought it's the direct experiences, first-hand experiences. And then when you feel the core of the first-hand experiences, you're able to communicate something, and then they're taking actions after feeling something substantial. And then when you give life to animation, the protagonist or other characters feel something firsthand, and then they take actions using that as a trigger for your action. So if the characters are forced to move with the instruction of the director or with the instruction of the animator, they may be moving, but they are not living they're not shining. And I forgot to mention this earlier, but
so we have to be careful of, like whenever we're not showing something, we want to get people curious to know what's going on there. So like, for example, there's highlight on windows. Also, there's a sun, but you can't see the sun. There's the wind, but you don't see the wind. You see the wind because, trees are swaying. So that's why we have to also trigger emotion from things that you cannot see in animation. And also it depends, depends on the sound, or it depends on the frames, so how we break down the frames. So yeah, it's things that you can't see. Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, there is maybe one last thing I would like to add about this future thing. For me, as I said, when I was 16, I saw, Princess Mononoke, Hotaru no Haka, Rurouni Kenshin, and it really changed my life. I mean, I don't think I would be the same person without those movies. And at this age, at this special age, you are, still naive because you're young and you have experienced life, but you are still more mature because you're trying to dissociate yourself from your parents, you see, and you start to build your identity as well. And that's why when I watched those movies, and also, I mean, I was also a video game player, so I play in my generation, a bit earlier, Final Fantasy VII, play Metal Gear Solid. Of course, it had a huge impact on me, of course, So, but still, so that's why this age for me is very, interesting, and that's why if this future project happens, it would be really for this target, I would say, yeah.
Thank you so much. Let us finish the talk session here at this point. So thank you so much. And now let us have one question from one person. Yes, this was so much fun listening to you. And so you spoke about the work that created a strong impression, and all three of you're working on different projects. And what is the most impressive thing that really, so your work, what did you struggle most with? What work do you remember a lot? So maybe we can start with Liane-Cho. What was a big struggle? What was a memorable work? Anything is fine.
For our movie, Little Amélie, this book that we adapt is not for kids. It's an adult book for adults, you see. But with Panelists, we wanted to do like a family movie for everyone, for kids, for adults, with the different layers of understanding, And you know, in our world, everyone has an opinion about what a child can understand or can handle, right? But with Maëlys, we always believe that children can understand more than we think. They just understand it in a very different way, maybe a bit more emotionally different, you know. So that was really the struggle as well, you know, to convince, you know, that all those complexity, these difficult themes, you know, that we treated in this movie, could be handled by kids, you know. We just need to trust them more.
Thank you for that. Okay, how about Director Takahashi, looking back on all your work? Well, this is not really my director's work. I was used to work in animation coordination. I didn't know how to make animation. I just suddenly became part of this animation company. And I was involved, we were involved in Kureyon Shinchan movie. And I didn't know left from right. I had to go there, I had to go here, and I had to drive all night. I had to do all these things. I didn't even know what was going on at the time. And then when I saw the movie, the film, I thought it was so interesting, and all these adults, they're like working so hard to make this film done. And I saw that, and I thought, okay, this might be a job I can, you know, keep doing for the rest of my life. So that was production coordination. Yes, okay, so that would left a mark on your life because you knew your occupation. It was kind of like the creator's high. Or maybe I was just high because I wasn't really a creator. But anyway, so yeah, I still look back on that work. Okay, how about Director Kawamori? Yes, it's hard to say one thing, maybe two things. So as a director, 40 years ago, I worked on the macros of Do You Remember Love? That was back in when I was still a college student. And that was so much of a struggle because I didn't even go to vocational school to do work on this. And it was a big effort, and so many people helped me out. And then after that, and then also the next one, Earth Girl Arjuna, that was set in the modern times, and that was difficult. And also macros, the culture, and Arjuna had a theme, and to make, and then actually Labyrinth has the best of both worlds, and original work is so hard to do these days. There's not much of original works, and you know, I had the support for so many people for this film, and I want everybody to see it. So that is what I'd like to say. Yes, thank you so much, all three directors. So let us close this session, and I'd like to say thank you to all three directors on the stage. Let's give them a big round of applause.